The Great Hall of Varanthus Prime was the largest structure ever built by living hands. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. Light came from floating crystals that the Varunai people had grown over 10,000 years. Every 100 years, the Galactic Council gathered here to show their newest technologies. It was a tradition older than most stars. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood near the back of the hall. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Around her, beings of every shape and size filled the chamber. The insect-like Cathari clicked and buzzed in groups of 20 or 30. Their hard shells gleamed under the crystal light. The Voronoi floated past like living diamonds, their bodies made of something between solid and liquid. And high above everyone else, on platforms of ancient wood, sat the Eldari. They looked almost human, but their eyes held the weight of millions of years. Humanity had joined this council only 40 years ago. In galactic terms, that was nothing. A blink. A single breath. Most species here had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out how to make fire. Elena watched as the Cathari representative presented their new engine design. It was 3% faster than the previous model. The hall filled with polite sounds of approval. 3% was considered excellent progress. The Cathari had been working on this design for 800 years. Next came the Varunai. They showed a new type of shield that could stop slightly more radiation than before. 200 years of research had produced this improvement. Again, the hall approved. This was how things worked in the galaxy. Slow and careful, patient and measured. No one rushed. No one took risks. Why would they? Most of these species would live for thousands of years. What was the hurry? Elena felt her heart beating faster. In her pocket, she held a small data chip. On that chip was information that would change everything. She was terrified. She was also excited in a way she had not felt since she was a young girl. The Eldari High Arbiter raised one long, thin hand. The hall fell silent immediately. When an Eldari spoke, everyone listened. This particular Eldari, whose name translated roughly to "she who remembers the first light," had personally witnessed the birth of 3 stars. She was older than most civilizations. "We have seen the contributions of our member species," the Arbiter said. Her voice was soft but somehow filled the entire hall. "As always, progress continues at its proper pace. Now we shall hear from our observers. The younger species may speak if they wish, though we expect they have little to add." This was the moment. Elena stepped forward. Her shoes made small sounds on the crystal floor. Thousands of eyes turned to look at her. She felt very small and very alone. "Honored members of the council," Elena said. Her voice did not shake, though she felt like shaking. "Humanity requests permission to present our contribution to this summit." Silence. Then a sound that might have been laughter came from the Cathari section. Their mandibles clicked together in amusement. The Voronoi pulsed with colors that Elena had learned meant something like, "How cute." Even some of the ancient Eldari allowed small smiles to cross their faces. "Of course," the Arbiter said. There was kindness in her voice, the way an adult might be kind to a child showing off a drawing. "Please share what humanity has achieved." Elena took a deep breath. 40 years ago, we joined this council. We were grateful. We were humble. We knew we had much to learn. And we have learned. We have studied your technologies, your methods, your ways of thinking. She paused. The hall waited. But we have also continued to think in our own way. Human beings live short lives. We do not have thousands of years to perfect a design. We do not have centuries to test a theory. We have decades, sometimes less. This makes us do things differently. The Arbiter's smile faded slightly. "What are you saying, Ambassador?" Elena pulled out the data chip. "I am saying that Earth's United Engineering Corps has built a new ship. We call it the Defiant Hope, and it is the fastest vessel ever created in the history of this galaxy." Now there was real silence. Not amused silence. Shocked silence. A Cathari admiral pushed forward through the crowd. His shell was covered in medals and marks of honor. "Impossible," he said. His voice was harsh, like stones grinding together. "Humans have been traveling in space for barely 200 years. You cannot have surpassed technologies we have developed over millions of years." "With respect," Elena said, I did not say we surpassed your technologies. I said we built something new. The Voronoi representative floated closer. Its body shifted colors rapidly, showing confusion and curiosity. New? There is nothing new and faster than light travel. The principles have been understood for longer than your species has existed. There are limits, physical laws. These cannot be broken. We did not break them, Elena said. We went around them. The Arbiter leaned forward. For the first time, there was something other than gentle amusement in her ancient eyes. Explain. I would rather show you, Elena said. In 72 standard hours, the Defiant Hope will conduct a demonstration. All council members are invited to observe. We will prove our claims with evidence, not words. Murmurs spread through the hall like waves through water. The Cathari clicked angrily among themselves. The Voronoi flashed confused colors at each other. Even the Eldari seemed disturbed, shifting on their ancient platforms. The Arbiter held up her hand again. Silence returned. You understand, she said slowly, that if this demonstration fails, humanity will lose much respect. You are a young species. You cannot afford to make wild claims that prove false. Elena smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. And if the demonstration succeeds? The Arbiter did not answer. She did not need to. Everyone in the hall understood. If the demonstration succeeded, nothing would ever be the same again. 72 hours, Elena said. We will send coordinates to all member species. Come and see what humans can do when we refuse to accept the word impossible. She turned and walked out of the hall. Behind her, the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy watched her go. And for the first time in a very long time, they felt something they had almost forgotten. They felt uncertainty. The shipyard floated above Earth like a metal flower. It was humanity's largest construction in space, built over 30 years by workers from every nation on the planet. From below, people could sometimes see it crossing the night sky, a bright dot moving among the stars. Inside the shipyard, Marcus Chen had not slept in 3 days. He stood in front of a window that looked down at the Defiant Hope. The ship was small compared to the vessels other species built. It was only 200 meters long, shaped like an arrow pointing toward the future. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, made from materials that did not exist on Earth until 10 years ago. But the hull was not what made this ship special. The engine was what mattered, and the engine was something no other species had ever built. Marcus was 62 years old. He had spent his entire adult life working on this project. When he started, people laughed at the idea. They said it was impossible. They said the math did not work. They said humans should focus on copying what other species had already done, not trying to invent something new. Marcus had ignored them all. His daughter's voice came through his earpiece. Dad, the final diagnostic is complete. All systems are ready. Priya Chen was 30 years old. She had trained her whole life to fly this ship. When she was a child, Marcus had told her bedtime stories about the stars. He had told her that someday, humans would travel faster than anyone thought possible. She had believed him. She still believed him. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked. He walked through the corridor toward the main control room. Engineers in white coats rushed past him, checking screens and adjusting equipment. I have never been more sure of anything, Priya said. This is what we have worked for. Marcus entered the control room. Screens covered every wall, showing data from the ship below. In the center of the room, a hologram displayed the Cascade Drive, the engine that would change everything. He looked at it and remembered the history. 300,000 years ago, the Voronoi had theorized about this kind of technology. They had done the math. They had built models, and they had given up. The equations were too unstable. The risks were too high. One small mistake could tear a hole in the fabric of space itself. The Voronoi had decided it was not worth trying. They had been patient. They had found safer methods, slower methods. What was the rush? They would live for 10,000 years. They could afford to wait. Humans could not afford to wait. Humans lived for 80 years if they were lucky. Every decade lost was a decade they could not get back. So when Marcus found the Voronoi research in an old archive, he did not see impossible. He saw a challenge. 847 times the team had failed. 847 times something went wrong. Explosions, collapses, equipment melting into useless metal. Some failures were small. Some almost destroyed the entire shipyard. After failure number 500, most of the team wanted to stop. The government cut their funding. Other scientists said they were wasting time and resources. Marcus kept going. He sold his house. He borrowed money from everyone who would lend it. He worked 18 hours a day every day. On attempt 848, something changed. The drive activated, space folded, and a small probe disappeared from one side of the solar system and appeared on the other side in less than a second. That was 5 years ago. Since then, the team had grown. The government gave them unlimited resources. The best minds from every country came to help. And now the Defiant Hope was ready for its first real test. "Walk me through it again," Marcus said to his daughter. The whole process. Priya's voice was calm and confident. The Cascade drive does not move the ship through space. Instead, it convinces space to move around the ship. We create a wave of compressed space in front of us and expanded space behind us. The ship rides the wave like a surfer rides water. And the Cascade part? Each wave we create helps build the next wave. They compound on each other. The first wave is small, the second is bigger. By the time we reach the 10th wave, we are moving faster than any ship has ever moved. The distance between us and our destination shrinks with each fold. Marcus nodded. He had explained this concept 1,000 times to skeptical scientists and politicians, but hearing it from his daughter made it feel real. "The council thinks we are fools," Priya said. "They think this will fail. They have been doing things their way for millions of years. They cannot imagine that a species as young as ours could discover something they missed." "That is exactly why we will succeed," Marcus said. "They stopped looking. They decided they knew everything there was to know. We are still looking. We are still asking questions. We are still willing to be wrong 847 times if it means being right once." A warning light flashed on one of the screens. One of the engineers rushed to check it. After a moment, she turned back to Marcus with a smile. "False alarm. All systems still stable." Marcus let out a breath he did not know he was holding. In 40 hours, his daughter would take the ship into space. She would activate an engine that had never been tested at full power. She would either prove that humans belonged among the stars, or she would die trying. He wished he could go with her. He wished he could take her place. But Priya was the best pilot humanity had ever produced. If anyone could do this, she could. "Priya," he said softly into the earpiece. "Yes, Dad? I am proud of you. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that." There was silence for a moment. Then his daughter's voice came back, warm and strong. "I know, Dad. And when this works, when we show the whole galaxy what humans can do, you will be proud of all of us." Marcus looked down at the Defiant Hope, resting quietly in its dock. Such a small ship to carry such big dreams. Such a fragile hope against such ancient certainty. But that was how humans had always done things. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats. They had flown through the sky in machines made of cloth and wire. They had walked on the moon with computers weaker than a modern phone. They had done all these things because someone, somewhere, had refused to accept that something was impossible. Tomorrow they would do it again. The observation fleet gathered in empty space between two spiral arms of the galaxy. 17 species had sent ships to watch the demonstration. Some came because they were curious. Others came because they wanted to see humans fail. A few came because they were afraid of what might happen if humans succeeded. The Eldari dreadnought was the largest ship present. It stretched for more than a kilometer, covered in symbols that told the history of a civilization older than Earth's sun. The Arbiter stood on its observation deck, watching through windows made of crystal that had been grown over centuries. Around the dreadnought, smaller ships floated in careful formation. Cathari warships with their sharp angles and weapon ports. Varunai vessels that seemed to flow and change shape like water. Ships from species whose names humans could barely pronounce, all waiting for the same thing. Then a flash of light. The Defiant Hope emerged from normal hyperspace and took its position at the center of the observation area. The Arbiter looked at it and felt something strange. The human ship was tiny. It looked almost like a toy compared to the great vessels around it. And yet there was something about it, a feeling, a sense of purpose that seemed to radiate from its dark hull. "They are brave," said a voice beside her. It was the Voronoi representative floating nearby. "Foolish, but brave, to make such claims in front of the entire council. If they fail, they will never recover." "Yes," the arbiter said. "If they fail." Communication channels opened across all ships. Priya Chen's voice came through, calm and clear. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, thank you for coming. Today we will demonstrate the capabilities of the Defiant Hope and its Cascade drive. Our destination is the relay station in the Andromeda Galaxy, approximately 2.5 million light-years from our current position." Murmurs crossed the fleet. The Andromeda Relay was a famous landmark, built by the Eldari long ago as a marker for the edge of known space. At the fastest speeds the Council approved, reaching it would take about 18 months. "We will make this journey," Priya continued, "and return to this exact location. We estimate the total travel time will be less than 2 hours." Now the murmurs turned to open disbelief. The Cathari admiral, who had challenged Elena in the Great Hall, spoke harshly over the communication channel. "This is a joke. 2 hours for a journey of 18 months? You insult us with such claims." "I understand your doubt," Priya said. Her voice remained calm. "I ask only that you watch. The results will speak for themselves." On the observation deck, the arbiter leaned forward. She had lived for millions of years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched species evolve from simple creatures to beings of great wisdom. In all that time, she had never seen anything truly surprising. But something about this moment felt different. Something about these short-lived creatures from a small blue planet made her pay attention. "Beginning Cascade Drive activation," Priya announced. The Defiant Hope began to change. Its hull seemed to vibrate, to shimmer like heat rising from hot ground. The space around it started to bend in ways that sensors could not properly measure. Light twisted and stretched. Inside the ship, Priya gripped her controls. The universe outside her window was becoming strange. Colors appeared that had no names. Shapes formed that made no sense. She had trained for this, but training could not fully prepare anyone for the reality of folding space itself. "First cascade wave forming," she reported. "All systems stable." The ship stretched. That was the only way to describe it. The Defiant Hope became thin, impossibly thin, spreading across dimensions that normal matter could not touch. On the observation ships, sensors went wild with data that no one knew how to read. "Second wave, third wave, cascade is building." The arbiter watched with ancient eyes that had seen stars born and die. What she was seeing now was something entirely new. The mathematics of it should have been impossible. The Voronoi had proven that 300,000 years ago. And yet here it was, happening in front of her. Fifth wave, sixth wave, approaching critical cascade threshold. The Defiant Hope was barely visible now. It existed in multiple places at once, spread across folds of space like butter, spread too thin on bread. Priya's voice came through, broken by static. Seventh, eighth, ninth, engaging full cascade. Now. The ship vanished. One moment it was there, stretched and strange but still visible. The next moment it was simply gone. No flash of light, no explosion, just absence where matter had been. Silence fell across the observation fleet. The Cathari admiral demanded reports from his sensor operators. They had nothing to tell him. The Voronoi representative changed colors rapidly, trying to process what had happened. Even the arbiter stood perfectly still, unable to explain what she had just witnessed. Minutes passed. 10 minutes. 20. The Cathari began to mutter that the ship had been destroyed. The humans had killed their own pilot with their foolish experiment. This was what happened when young species tried to go too fast, reach too far. 30 minutes. 40 minutes. At 43 minutes, space folded again. The same twisting, the same impossible bending. And then the Defiant Hope was there, whole and undamaged, exactly where it had departed from. "Observation fleet, this is the Defiant Hope." Priya's voice came through, clear and strong. We have returned from the Andromeda relay station, transmitting telemetry data in beacon confirmation now. Data flooded across every ship in the fleet, recordings from the Andromeda beacon, navigation logs showing the journey there and back, scientific measurements from a galaxy that no living member of the Council had ever visited. The Arbiter looked at the small human ship floating among the giants of the fleet. 43 minutes. A journey that should have taken 18 months, completed in 43 minutes. In her millions of years of life, she had never felt what she felt now. It took her a moment to recognize the emotion because she had not experienced it in so long. It was awe. The Cathari Admiral was speaking again, demanding to know how this was possible, accusing the humans of some kind of trick or deception. But his voice sounded weak now. Even he knew what had happened. Everything had changed. The galaxy that the Council had known, the galaxy of careful progress and patient development, was gone. A new galaxy had taken its place. And in this new galaxy, the small, short-lived creatures from Earth were no longer children watching from the back of the room. They were something else entirely. The great hall of Varanthos Prime had never been louder. Thousands of voices shouted over each other in languages from across the galaxy. The floating crystals that lit the chamber flickered with the emotional energy filling the space. Order had broken down completely. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the speaking platform, waiting. She had expected this reaction. She had prepared for it. That did not make it any easier to endure. The Cathari were the angriest. Their clicks and buzzes filled the air like a storm of insects. The admiral who had doubted humanity pushed through the crowd toward the platform, his guards close behind him. "This technology must be destroyed," he announced. His voice was loud enough to cut through the noise. "It is too dangerous. It changes everything we have built over millions of years. Humanity must be sanctioned for developing it without council approval." Voices rose in support. The Cathari had many allies among the older species. They had built their power on careful control of trade routes and travel times. If any ship could cross the galaxy in hours instead of months, that power would crumble to dust. But other voices pushed back. The Voronoi representative floated to the center of the chamber, colors flashing in complex patterns. "We should not act from fear," it said. "The humans have done something remarkable. We should learn from them, not punish them." "Learn from them," a Cathari counselor shouted. "They are children. They have been in space for barely 200 years. What can they teach us?" "How to do what we thought was impossible," the Voronoi replied. "That seems like a valuable lesson." The Arbiter had not spoken since the demonstration. She sat on her high platform, watching everything with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. The other Eldari sat with her, equally silent. They were thinking, processing, trying to understand how their ancient certainties had been shattered so quickly. Elena raised her hand. Slowly, the hall began to quiet. When she spoke, her voice was steady and calm. "I understand your fear," she said. "Change is frightening, especially change that comes quickly. You have built a galaxy based on certain rules. Ships travel at certain speeds. Distances mean certain things. Power belongs to those who control the routes and the resources. We have just shown you that those rules can change." "You have thrown the galaxy into chaos," the Cathari Admiral said. "Wars will be fought over this technology. Species will be destroyed. You have doomed us all." Elena shook her head. "We have done nothing but build a ship. What happens next depends on all of us. We can fight over this technology. We can try to control it, to limit it, to pretend it does not exist. Or we can do something different." "What are you proposing?" the Voronoi asked. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. Humanity developed the Cascade Drive not for conquest. We developed it because we wanted to know our neighbors. We are a young species with short lives. We do not have time to wait centuries for messages to travel between stars. We are impatient and curious and sometimes reckless. These qualities made us develop this technology, but they also make us want to share it. Murmurs rippled through the hall. "Share it. We offer the Cascade Drive to any species that signs a mutual defense and exploration pact with Earth. Not an alliance that puts humanity in charge, a partnership of equals. You have knowledge and experience that spans millions of years. We have new ideas and fresh perspectives. Together, we could explore galaxies that no one has ever visited. We could discover things that none of us can imagine alone. The Cathari Admiral made a harsh sound. You expect us to believe this? Humans are offering the greatest technological advantage in history for free? There must be a price. The price is peace, Elena said. The price is cooperation. The price is treating us as equals instead of children. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it with friends at our side. Silence fell over the hall. The Arbiter finally moved, rising from her platform and floating down to the main level. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. She stopped in front of Elena and looked at the human woman with ancient, thoughtful eyes. You are a strange species, the Arbiter said softly. You live such short lives. 80 years, 90 if you are fortunate. To us you are like mayflies, here for a moment and then gone. And yet in that moment, you have done what we could not do in millions of years. Perhaps that is why, Elena said. Because we have so little time. We cannot afford to be careful. We cannot afford to wait for perfect solutions. We try things. We fail. We try again. Our short lives force us to be bold. The Arbiter was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the hall. She bowed her head to Elena, an Eldari, bowing to a human. I believe you, she said. I believe that you truly want partnership and not dominion. Perhaps that is foolish of me. Perhaps I am wrong. But I have lived for millions of years by trusting my instincts, and my instincts tell me that humanity is something new. Something the galaxy has not seen before. Something we need. She turned to face the council. The Eldari will sign this pact. We will share our knowledge, and we will learn what humans can teach us. Let those who wish to join us do so. Let those who wish to stand apart do so. But let no one say that the Eldari were too proud to recognize greatness when we saw it. The Voronoi were next, flashing colors of agreement. Then other species one by one stepped forward. Not all of them. The Cathari retreated to their section of the hall, clicking angrily among themselves. Several other species joined them in refusal, but enough agreed. Enough were willing to try something new. Elena looked around the hall at the faces of beings from across the galaxy. Some looked at her with hope, some with fear, some with wonder. All of them were seeing humanity in a new way. They were no longer the children at the back of the room. They were partners, equals, friends. And this was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the demonstration. The galaxy had changed more in those 6 months than it had in the previous 1,000 years. Old agreements were being rewritten. Ancient boundaries were being reconsidered. Species that had never spoken to each other were now talking about joint projects and shared discoveries. The Cascade shipyard orbited Jupiter like a crown of metal and light. It was the largest construction project in human history, built in record time by workers from 12 different species. Human engineers worked beside Voronoi crystal shapers. Cathari defectors, who had rejected their hive's isolation, helped design navigation systems. Even a team of Eldari contributed their ancient knowledge of space-time mathematics. Marcus Chen stood on the main observation deck, looking out at the ship that would make history. The Unity was larger than the Defiant Hope, but still small by galactic standards. Its hull combined human metals with Voronoi crystal matrices that made the Cascade drive 3 times more efficient. Cathari algorithms would help navigate the folds of space with perfect precision. It was the first ship ever built by multiple species working together as equals. Priya Chen's voice came through the communication system. Dad, we are starting pre-launch checks. All crew members are aboard. Marcus smiled. His daughter had become famous across the galaxy. Every species knew the name of the pilot who had proven the impossible was possible. She had been offered positions on 100 different worlds. She had turned them all down. She wanted to fly. She wanted to explore. She wanted to see what no one had ever seen before. The observation ships are arriving, said a voice beside Marcus. He turned to see Elena Vasquez walking toward him. The ambassador had aged in the past 6 months. The pressure of negotiations with dozens of species had taken its toll. But there was a light in her eyes that had not been there before, a satisfaction that came from seeing a dream become real. How many, Marcus asked. Representatives from every species that signed the pact, plus observers from a few who did not. Even the Cathari sent a ship. though they claim they are only watching to document our failure. Marcus laughed. They will be watching for a long time. This is just the beginning. He looked back at the Unity. Through its windows, he could see movement. The crew was preparing for launch. Humans, Voronoi, Cathari defectors, and one Eldari observer who had volunteered to join the mission. They would be the first mixed-species crew to use the Cascade Drive, the first to travel beyond the galaxies the Council knew. Their destination was a distant galaxy that appeared only as a smudge of light in the most powerful telescopes. No one knew what they would find there. That was the point. A shuttle approached the observation deck, its doors opened, and the Arbiter stepped out. She had come personally to watch the launch. In her millions of years, she had watched many important moments. She sensed that this one would be remembered longer than most. "Chief Engineer Chen," she said, nodding to Marcus. "Ambassador Vasquez, thank you for allowing me to be here." "You honor us with your presence," Elena said. The Arbiter walked to the window and looked at the Unity. "When I was young," she said, "which was a very long time ago, I believed that progress moved in straight lines, slow and steady, always forward, never jumping ahead. I believed that wisdom came from patience, and that the greatest achievements required the most time." She turned to face Marcus. "You have shown me that I was wrong. Sometimes progress comes in leaps. Sometimes the greatest achievements come from those who do not have time to wait." "We had good teachers," Marcus said. "The Voronoi mathematics, the Eldari mapping of space-time. We built on what others had done before us. But you built something new from those pieces. That is what matters." The Arbiter looked back at the ship. "My observer on that vessel, her name translates as She Who Seeks the Unknown. She is young for an Eldari, only 50,000 years old. She asked me why she should join a human mission when she could wait for the Eldari to build their own Cascade ships in a few centuries." "What did you tell her?" Elena asked. "I told her that in a few centuries, the humans will have explored 1,000 galaxies. If she wants to be part of the greatest discoveries in history, she should not wait. She should go now." The Arbiter smiled, which was rare for an Eldari. She understood. The communication system activated again. Priya's voice filled the observation deck. "All stations report ready. Unity is prepared for launch." Marcus stepped forward to the communication panel. "Unity, this is Shipyard Command. You are cleared for launch. Good luck out there." "Thank you, Dad." Priya's voice was warm. "We will bring back stories worth telling." The Unity began to move, pulling away from the shipyard. Its engines glowed with a soft blue light that the Voronoi crystals gave off. Slowly it drifted into open space, positioning itself for the Cascade jump. Around it, observation ships from a dozen species watched. Cameras recorded every moment. Billions of beings across the galaxy were watching live feeds, waiting to see what would happen next. The Unity's hull began to shimmer. Space around it started to bend and twist. The Cascade Drive was activating, building its waves, folding the universe around the small ship and its brave crew. Marcus watched with tears in his eyes. His whole life had led to this moment. All the failures, all the setbacks, all the people who had told him it was impossible. They had all been wrong, and now his daughter was about to travel farther than any living being had ever traveled before. "Here we go," Priya said. The Unity stretched across dimensions, became thin as light, spread across folds of space that no instrument could measure. For a moment it existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then it was gone, not destroyed, not damaged, simply somewhere else, somewhere unimaginably far away. The observation deck was silent. Marcus stood at the window, looking at the empty space where the ship had been. Beside him, Elena and the Arbiter waited. They would wait for the Unity to return. They would hear the stories of what the crew had found. They would learn things that no one in the galaxy had ever known. But even now, before any of that happened, Marcus knew the most important thing had already been accomplished. Humans and aliens were working together. They were exploring together. They were becoming something new, something that combined the wisdom of ancient species with the bold impatience of young ones. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Marcus thought, was exactly what the universe needed.